Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage Colin Sutherland.
Hey everybody. Wow, day one. We got another day tomorrow. It's going to be an awesome day tomorrow. But to wrap up today, day one, it's going to be awesome, guys. Got two fireside chats for you. I'm going to bring out our fireside chat moderator. He's going to be doing both fireside chats, a person I've known for a lot of years, Mike Antich. So Mike is the editor and associate publisher of Bobbitt Publications. Have you ever had the chance to spend time with Mike? He's the most knowledgeable person, most passionate person about our fleet industry you'll ever want to meet. You'll know what he looks like. So when he's walking around, hey Bill, when he's walking around, you'll be able to go and say, hey Mike, would you like to do a feature article on my company? And he'll say, oh, absolutely, I'm really interested in your company, and I'll do a one-page feature article on it, because that's the kind of guy Mike is. He's currently editor and the associate publisher for Automotive Fleet Financials, and Work Truck magazines, and he's also the USA editor for Fleet Europe. He really is knowledgeable across all industry verticals. He's passionate about data. He's passionate about fleet. So please welcome Mike Antich to the stage. Mike, come on out here.
Thank you, Colin.
You got your mic?
I think so. Thank you.
Great session.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, and I want to thank Geotab for this opportunity to present today. And with that, I'd like to introduce my panelists. The first is a very good friend, longtime friend of mine, John Domowski. He's the Senior Global Fleet Manager for Mondelez International. So with that, a round of applause for John Domowski. And our second panelist is Dina Kushaleva. And Dina is a recent 2019 Fleet Safety Manager of the Year. She's Senior Health, Safety, and Environment Manager for Directed Energy. So with that, a round of applause. Well, take a seat. Well, thank you. And one of the reasons John and Dina were invited was, they're definitely subject matter experts in their particular areas, but where it really is proven, a lot of people say they're subject matter experts, but when your peers say you're subject matter experts, that's where it really counts. So a couple of accolades. John was 2017 Fleet Manager of the Year, 2019 European Fleet Safety Manager of the Year, and the first time ever for an American, he was runner-up for the 2019 Global Fleet Manager of the Year, given by our partner Nexus Communication, Fleet Europe. Dina was just the recent 2019 Fleet Safety Manager of the Year, presented by a very prestigious organization, the American Automotive Leasing Association. So a little recognition for their awards, and a round of applause for them, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So to start the discussion, the key thing that I'd like to talk about is a couple pillars. Colin had addressed the key pillars of innovation that drive their company, one of which was safety. And this is an area where both John and Dina excel at. And would like to start the discussion here, perhaps ladies first, and the fact that Dina won the 2019 Fleet Safety Manager of the Year award. What advice do you give in terms of best practices, and what did you do that caused your peers to elect you for that honor?
Well, I think when it comes to safety, safety is about people. When it comes to driver safety, you have to know how to combine fleet and safety in one combination. I think the biggest part that helped us build a program that's customized to do pre-screening of drivers and automated scorecard for each driver I have nationwide, North America-wide, it's really having the leaders to understand that the risks associated with our drivers on the road are very high, and there are certain things that we have control over that we could put in place. Really, that's where it started. We showed and demonstrated how we could do that with the vendors such as ARI, who manages our fleet, with Geotab, that helped us do a lot of on-site, in-cab coaching with our drivers and changing their behaviors. Once we showed those results and showed what we could do, we were able to reduce number of injuries. So most of my guys are able to go home, not as many get hurt, and really that's all that matters.
Very good. And John, you manage a 10,000 vehicle global fleet. So how do you address fleet safety, and what are some of the best practices that you recommend?
Well, first of all, addressing fleet safety is, there's so many tools that are available here to address driver behavior, to identify and get the data as far as how the driver is doing. And that's all important, and I really want to thank all my colleagues out there that sponsors this event, because they're the ones that provide me the tools to identify which driver needs training. So I embrace that relationship with those key stakeholders that help drive and identify driver behavior. But in order to identify driver behavior, you get the data, but you have to do something with it. And this is where a governance team comes into place. This is where the culture of safety is imperative. And it might sound like right out of an auto policy playbook, but it starts with the culture, it starts with the governance and the key stakeholders, the operation of fleet, also health and safety and environment leaders. And it starts with those cross-functional teams working together. But one thing about a global fleet that I've learned through my experience is that identifying incidents is critical, because in each country, the incident could be classified differently. So you have to find a way to streamline that process. The good news is, whether I'm here in the US at a conference like this, or whether I'm in Europe or Asia Pacific, there are resources. So it's all about developing those partnerships, but internally, along with those partnerships, is the data is clean, it's classified correctly, and you have a culture and a governance team that really believes in safety and not just talks about it, but make it a condition of employment or a recommendation for a role within our organization.
Yeah, those are critical points. Driver engagement can't be understated. That's really going to make or break any fleet safety program.
Yes.
So moving on to productivity initiatives, that's one of the other areas we wanted to discuss. So there are synergies between safety, productivity, keeping people on the road. How do you address that in your capacity as health, safety, and environment manager at Directed Energy, Dina?
I think when it comes to productivity, most of my guys are on the road. 85% of their time is really behind the wheel. So when you're trying to find a solution that could help them, it has to be something that works, something they have access to, and there has to be full transparency. So access to different devices that go along with apps or something that they can access remotely. Work makes it very easy to implement. You have a greater buy-in from the drivers, especially when it comes to scorecard perception, right? So when it comes to different points that we assign, whether it's for accidents or for infractions while they're driving, whether it's speeding and what have you, for any driver that's out there, they have to know these are the actions that they are taking, and they have to know there's ways for them to control or be able to see what that behavior looks like. So if you figure out a way to present it in a either number way, in numbers or in colors, simple to understand, doesn't take that much to read. You just look at it and access it, and that's really it. Once we have a solution that works that way, really that makes it the winner for all my guys. Mm-hmm. Makes it easy to manage, makes it easy to present, and easy to monitor.
Right. You know, I mentioned that there's synergies between safety and productivity, but just the same way, there's also arguments where they run counter to one another. You know, a lot of managers or drivers that are behind the wheel, multitask. They're carrying on more responsibilities than ever. which leads ultimately to driver distraction. So how do you balance that, keeping your drivers productive while at the same time minimizing driver distraction opportunities?
In the world that I have the privilege to work in with the drivers that work for Mondelez, I started this session regarding culture and the safety of culture, and it has to be implied in everything we do, and that's a big statement to make, but when you track them, not only when you track their driver behavior, but you also get them to change their behavior by training with certain modules, training modules. And you give them an opportunity to do that, and it's documented. I'm a big supporter of module training where not just for the bad drivers, but for the good drivers. And because they still need to get that repeat message and not take for granted just because they've gone through a year without any preventable accidents or any moving violations, they can they'll get comfortable. They need to know the stress. And it's not a scare tactic, but it's an awareness. Because we work with many different generations at Mondelez. And what I found out with the millennials is if you explain to them what that safety means, instead of showing them a video that turned into a bad situation, show them why the video or the module is there and it's being implemented. They're very intelligent people. Show them your spend. Show them what you spend on third-party liabilities, and they get it. They get it, and it's part of that educational process. And I noticed as I traveled throughout the United States and in Europe and Asia Pacific, one thing I see familiar is they all want to get home safely to their family at the end of the day. What a better way to support a safety message and mean it. Speak from the heart, which is one of our core values.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there in terms of changing driver behavior, because that's really a fundamental cornerstone for a lot of initiatives that you may have in place. If you teach the drivers to drive more safely, slower speeds, more cautiously, that also in turn dovetails into sustainability initiatives. You know, they're actually driving their vehicles more effectively, emitting less emissions, and so on. So any additional comments between the two of you before moving on to another topic of that subject?
No.
I do want to make one comment, and I know I'm not a finance person because that's not one of my strong core competencies. But what I am is a person that is aware of your category spend. And when you reduce your accidents and when you have an initiative around speeding, and there's many options to address speeding initiatives and many technology here to address that, it really impacts your fuel. I mean, 10,500 vehicles, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of vehicles, but percentagely, your driving behavior can influence your fuel spend anywhere from 15 to 20% improvement. And when you spend over, multi-million dollars a year on fuel, that has a big impact with total cost of ownership. And your sustainability group at the end of the year are very happy with you because they've seen that's gone down. And that's always good.
Yep.
Very good. So one of the things, since this is pretty much a technology type conference, one of the things that I've done over the years is surveyed fleet managers on what they consider to be the top traits that make for a great fleet manager. And there were a number of different traits that come up, but in the context of this event that we're at, one of the key things was receptivity to new technology, adopting new technology in their fleet operations. How have you adopted technology in your fleet operations that helped you achieve these goals in terms of safety, productivity, and other initiatives that you may have in place?
Well,
or John?
Mike, if I may address that first part of your question, and I want to make sure I have it correctly.
Okay.
What does it take to have a best-in-class fleet? And if I may say this, I think it starts at home. And it starts with my spouse, Connie, who has a lot of understanding and support she gives me, because when you're in a global role, you're not home all the time. And so I know she's in the audience somewhere, so I wanted to thank her for that support, because I always leave home with a smile, so that makes me feel better when I go challenge Gilsey Safety's challenge. So thank you, Connie. I don't know where you're at, but thank you. I know you'll probably get mad at me for saying that, but hey, get over it, okay? Anyway. The second thing, how to make, and I'll get to the technology, but I think before I get to the technology, a global fleet works with procurement, works with safety, works with insurance, works with finance and legal, and you have all these cross-functional groups. And that's the unique thing about the success of the fleet. Mike was kind enough to kind of read a few of the awards that have my name next to it, but there's other names that have been added, that should be added to the Fleet Manager of the Year and the runner-up for Global Fleet and European Fleet Manager, and that's my entire team. And surround myself with my team is one way I can do this, is recognize their core competency, recognize the generation, and recognize where they want to go within the organization. You know what, I can't say enough about the group that I work with. Obviously, you can tell by the color of my hair, it's not the dye, it's the natural color, is that I'm a baby boomer. And the best class I ever took to managing the fleet is how to work with different generations. And I want to share that with you, because that is critical. And probably my best success, my biggest success, is when I had my team on stage in Miami doing a presentation about global fleet. But now, going back to technology, one thing I like about technology, and I'll be very brief, is I love these apps and these scorecards that are coming out here in this audience, and the strategic partners. I don't like to call them vendors. I call them strategic partners, and all the resources that are out there today. What has worked is gamification. They want to know what they're being measured and what they're going to get from it. And are they going to get not only home safely with their family, but they like to compete among their peers, but they also are attached to that iPhone, not when they're driving, but they're attached to that app. So the more apps coming available, keep it coming. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Dina? What comments would you make?
Let's see, when it comes to technology, we have a team that supports myself and many others within the company that always look out for other opportunities or opportunities that we can add on. But what I found that worked best for us was when we had our drivers that would go out to conferences. So whether it's a fleet conference or what have you, we usually send the employees, the best drivers that are out there. We'll recognize them by sending them out to different conferences so they can kind of look and see what other solutions are there, bring their thoughts back to the team, so we can then figure out whether or not it's something that could be worked on, something that can be incorporated. Not only do they find something new and they're behind the technology and they're the ones that are kind of driving the technology implementation within the production and operations, but it also helps us find those strategic partners, because they find that they form those partnerships right then and there on the spot. They bring the partners back to us, and then we have the discussions about what would be the best way to implement, best way to introduce. Just like John, we have multiple operations across, in my case, North America. We also have variety of drivers for different states, and they all have different flavors, and they also have different departments, so on and so forth. So when you're trying to bring all the stakeholders back together, if the drivers are the ones that are bringing in and saying, this is a technology that could work for us, this is something that could actually make life easier or make it better when it comes to operations or being able to get to a job site or what have you, usually that's hands down a solution that is definitely getting looked at. The rest of it is really bringing in the procurement and everybody else to do the budgets and work out the details.
So what sort of metrics do you use in terms of, let's say, your telematic devices and so on in implementing these different initiatives? What metrics do you find to be the most important to you?
Most of our drivers decided to go for anything that they have control over. So even when it comes to telematics device, although most drivers will view it as brother's keeper, right? So somebody's watching them or what have you. What we found that worked better for us was finding a device that helped us do the coaching in the cab, but also providing the warning. So it's not that you're penalizing the driver right away. It's something that allows them to change their behavior, gives them opportunity to do something about it prior to them actually being either penalized or disciplined or what have you. So it gives them the opportunity. I think for any matrix that actually successfully worked for us, it was anything in that realm, allowing the driver to make the better choice. Over time, what we found is that those actions turn into a habit, which becomes part of the culture. And these days, a lot of my drivers are actually asking for every one of my locations, we have a handful of devices, telematics devices, they're on what we call standby, because a lot of them will come in and say, hey, my daughter is turning, going into the driving age, can I use the technology to kind of help her out a little bit? So it becomes something that's family-oriented, something that the guys will actually take on, and something they use every day.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to share with the audience, John?
As far as measuring, the two most important categories that I measure is the speeding, and because of how it relates to not only the individual driver's safety, but also the fuel economy. And the other one is harsh braking. Those two, from a driver perspective, with changing driver behavior. From a global KPI, as it relates to safety, is preventable accidents, which can be challenged in certain countries because they classify vehicles incidents differently, and compliance in safety training. Just because were involved in an incident, it's not a given that you're going to take that training. Sometimes they forget to take it. Well, we have things in place where they get notifications. So being in compliance with training is important. And the third one is the options, the safety options. The OEMs, my partners that I have at Mondelez with the OEMs, the safety options that they are able to put into a fleet vehicle and putting it into a compact vehicle or lower level vehicle, and being on the customer advisory board of a major OEM, all the OEMs have done a very good job. But the voice of the customers really does have an impact when it comes to safety options. So the fleet community, the fleet managers, need to really be an ambassador for their drivers and share that message with their OEMs, and the OEMs have been great. But the safety equipment, like not just backup cameras that is being enforced by the government, but crash avoidance, that is critical. Blind spot monitoring, and those are the accidents. Those are the ones that are going to keep the drivers safe and improve productivity.
Okay. And how do you get drivers to embrace this technology? Sometimes some fleet managers report pushback from drivers. I was wondering if you might be able to just address a couple pointers and best practices that you might have experienced in this area.
Okay. Training. The OEMs, just because you have this option available, you don't want them turning the thing off. Okay, sometimes we forget. We'll go to a dealer to pick up a new vehicle, and they'll give you the keys, okay? And they'll go through and tell you what the car is capable of and some of the features. But it can't stop there. You have to train these options when they're together for an area sales meeting or be part of someone's agenda. In other words, get out into your audience, into your drivers, and when they meet for a meeting, implement a training module face-to-face, but in addition to that, have one available like a YouTube, but it'd be an internal internet in the system. And the OEMs have been great for showing that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add to that, Dina?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, right? So for us, the way we try to help drivers embrace something is actually involving them in the process from the very beginning, having them part of the workshops, having them part of the decision making so they can decide what works for them best, because they're the ones that are ultimately going to be the users of whatever technology we bring.
Very good. Well, I would like to thank our two panelists. We're at the end of our time now. So a round of applause for John Domowski, Dina Kushaleva.
Thank you.
So thank you. So I'm going to be continuing with the moderating duties. I'll be up here doing a CEO panel, and I believe they're going to come out here, just bring another chair. And so as a recap of some of the important things that I think came out of this discussion was really the fact that driver engagement is really critical for any safety product that's out there. And in addition, modifying driver behavior is the other key component that's involved in this. If you're able to accomplish those two using telematics data, providing those metrics in place to monitor the progress that you're making, that's going to lead to dividends in many other areas in addition to safety. It's also going to be in the areas of sustainability, safety, and also in terms of productivity, drivers driving and using their assets more cost effectively.